It's dark, it's wet, it's extremely cold, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get this done.
One ring to rule them all, one ring to frighten them, one ring to break them all, and let the darkness bind them.
Hello and welcome to Battle Streams of Middle Earth, and welcome to my hobby vlog number 16. It's the one you've been waiting for. Oh yes, it is our annual Damian gets incredibly stressed out about getting ready for Throwing Skulls and freezes in a shed content. You know you love it. So yes, welcome to Battle Streams of Middle Earth. If you are new here, please do hit the subscribe button. It's lovely to have you. Battle Streams of Middle Earth is a channel based around the idea of embracing the hobby for the love of the hobby and just painting models purely for the love of it and to help clear your backlog. We do fortnightly live streams where our wonderful community gets to hang out together and just paint for a couple of hours on a Friday night normally around a given theme, and the whole point is that we all come together and we paint whichever model is on the theme rather than a model that we need for a particular tournament or a particular army or anything. It's such good fun, and it's hopefully helping us to clear those massive mountainous backlogs we have. But as well as that, I do these. I follow my hobby journey, and today this is the opposite of that. This is the opposite of painting for the love of it and painting for the fun of it. This is stressed out deadline painting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into this. In this vlog, hopefully if you're not new here, you've been following along. This is the Road to Throwing Skulls Part 3. I laid out the fact 2 hobby vlogs ago that I had 2 hurdles to get over. I had to paint the Dale guys, I had to paint the Grimhammers, and if I got through those, I had a chance of being ready for Throwing Skulls. And we got through those, they went well. So I can now go all in on everything else for Throwing Skulls, which is what I'm going to be doing in this vlog and revealing everything else. So get comfy. It's probably going to be a very, very long one. I think there's going to be a lot to show, but I'm going to take you on my journey now over the next couple of weeks to until Throwing Skulls. So let's do some calendar stuff to give you an idea. It is currently Saturday the 19th of November. Okay, so in 2 weeks time I'll be at Throwing Skulls. Okay, that's where we are, and so this clip I'm filming on the Saturday. Everything you're about to see is in the state it's in right now. So we've got 2 weeks basically to go. So before I get stuck into what I've got to do, I want to reveal my army essentially, because we've kind of been teasing that over the last 2 videos. So you've seen me paint some Dale guys with Girion leading them, and you've seen me painting some Grimhammers. And so it's not a huge shock to say I am taking a Hobbit era Erebor and Dale alliance, which I'm super excited about. It's weird, but given that they appear for a few minutes in the prologue, it's a theme I really like. It's an area of Dale I really like, and I actually prefer it to the idea of the Dale and the Iron Hills that we get in Defence of the North. Well, I suppose they're not even in the films at all, but it's always something that I've really liked. It's always what I've been drawn towards. I've had this kind of Army of Thrall already done for years and years now, so it's fun to finally get those Dale allies. And what's I think quite interesting about this is the army list that I'm taking. The idea for this Throwing Skulls project came about in December 2019. I can show you the files that I started making stuff for this on, I think it was the 11th of December 2019. It was basically as soon as I got back from Throwing Skulls in 2019, which is the year I went with my bag end as Bilbo. As soon as I got back from Throwing Skulls, I was super excited about Throwing Skulls, and so I came up with this idea, and I wrote the army list. And so I'll come back to the army list in a minute, but the army list was written in December, and so it's been sitting there on my computer for 3 years. But then when 2020 came around, like early 2020, I benched the idea. So almost immediately, about a month later, I went, no, I don't want to do this, I'm going to do this. And then spent a load of money on that project. And of course, Throwing Skulls 2020 didn't happen because of COVID. And then by the time 2021 came around, and there was a Throwing Skulls at the end of the year, as it got to the project, as it got to nearer it, I think it was only announced really close up to the project, so we didn't know if there was going to be an event, and that was it. It was announced about 2 months before, and so then I don't have the time to do the project that I had benched the Erebor and Dale project for. What have I got time to do? And I went with the Ents. So that's where there's a big long hobby vlog from this time last year talking about me getting my Ents ready. And there they are. Oh, no, I say there they are. They're just above the shop. Sorry, there's Dwarrowdale Throne Skulls 2018. So I couldn't do that project, and I did the Ents instead. So then I was going to do that project in 2022, and then I benched that project, which was the one that benched the Erebor and Dale, for a different project, both of which were going to take about 4 months. That was what I was slightly hinting towards at the start of the year. And then, as my hobby plans progressed this year, I realised that I was going to have about 2 months to do this project, and so I couldn't do either the project that benched the Erebor and Dale stuff in 2020, or the project that benched that one in 2022. And so I was like, well, what else can I do? I've only got about 2 months to do this, and so I came back to this Erebor and Dale thing. I dug out what I'd planned for this back in 2019, and because I've already painted the Army of Thor, or a lot of it, I was like, yes, that I could do in the time. So yeah, that's how I ended up settling on this idea. And it was going to be, as I said, it was going to be 2 months, but as it turns out, when I finally got to it after finishing everything else, I had 5 weeks to do it. So that's where we were, and you've basically seen the first 3 weeks of that. It was a week to do the Dale, or no, they were painted over 2 weeks, weren't they? Maybe I had 6 weeks, I can't remember. But the idea was that then I was going to spend a week on the Grimhammers and then 3 weeks on this. And as it turns out, I spent 2 weeks on the Grimhammer, so I've got 2 weeks left of this. So yeah, I've been working on this, all told, by the time I finish this, I would have been working on the Throne Skull project for 6 weeks. So yeah, the other thing that means is, if you're following along, yes, I do indeed have all the models and all the scenery and bits for 2 separate Throne of Skulls projects in the cupboard, waiting. So fingers crossed I get a bit more organised next year, and maybe one of those, maybe those are my projects for 2023 and 2024, but who knows what other exciting things will come along. So let's have a look at the army. I'm going to try and pull it up. This is what I wrote in 2019, and hopefully it's not proof, but hopefully you believe me, because you can see how the army's changed. So I went with, it was always going to be Girion with a wind lance and a captain, and then at the time it was just, we've got 19 warriors of Dale, one of whom has a banner, and then the dwarf side of it was going to be Thor and Thrain, and 18 Grimhammer Guardians of the King, and 14 Warriors of Erebor. And so the reason I'm saying you can tell that this was written back then is because since I did that list, Dale have had some new stuff. We've had the Windlance on its own, and we've had the Knights of Dale arrive. So whilst that was what I'd written, I then got to kind of update it to the newer version of the army list, essentially. But it was always planned to be this kind of combination, and more about I'll tell you the theme about it in a minute, but more about on the display board, kind of links to what the theme was going to be. But the idea was that I was thinking, well, what would the display board be? Like why would Dale and Erebor dwarves be together? And there's that lovely line, that throwaway line in Desolation Smaug, where they call it a dwarven windlance, and I believe the idea is that the dwarves gave the Dale guys the windlance, or the windlance eye. And so the plan was to have the army set in Erebor gifting the windlance. That was 3 years ago. That was always the plan. So that's why Girion got the windlance, not because I think it's the best thing in the game. So yeah, there was always going to be a plan of it. It was meant to be Thror giving Girion a windlance, and that was kind of what I went with. So now, of course, this is hopefully changing on the screen for you, but this is now my updated army list. What we now have is Girion just with the great bow. But then we have a captain of Dale, still the same, and then we have the separate windlance, which costs the same as the windlance for Girion, but it comes with 2 extra Dale guys. And now, instead of all those normal Dale guys, we have 8 Knights of Dale, which I already had painted, and then 9 Warriors of Dale, one of whom includes a banner. And then the Erebor contingent is fundamentally the same. It's Thror, Thrain, and then all those dwarves. So the dwarves are the same except for a few numbers which have switched around a little bit. But the main change is that the Windlance is now on its own, and I have Knights of Dale instead of Warriors. So that's what my army is basically. An allied, a historical alliance, green alliance between Dale and Erebor. Now, as you see, in terms of like model split, it's not 500 and 500. Throwing Skulls is 1,000 points. It's Erebor's about 600 and Dale's about 400. Part of that is obviously due to the fact that the dwarf heroes are about twice the cost of the Dale heroes, so that's a big hit. And then also the dwarves are more expensive in points than the Dale guys. But the primary reason for that is I didn't want to paint any more Dale models than I had to, given that I knew I was going to be on a real timeline for this, on a real like strict timeline. If you've been following my 4 hobby vlogs, you've seen the kind of peaks and troughs of my Dale collecting of late. So I hope you can understand why I didn't want to do too many of them. And it wasn't just the kind of I'm sick of them, as you've hopefully seen. I actually really enjoyed my last batch. It was more the fact they just take so long, and I needed to do things that didn't take very long. So what I did was I wrote the Dale half of this when I was adapting it to the to include the knights and include the windlands. I took my 400-point Dale army, which is here, they're all lined up here. I took that army that I painted in the first few Dale vlogs and took to Ardacon and Warhammer World Doubles, and I had that 400 points, and I took out Bard and Brand, and I put in Girion and a captain to swap the eras, and then I put in a Windlance. And I took that, so that was basically it. So it was taking out the heroes, putting in the 2 right heroes, and putting in a Windlance. That was my Dale army. Then what I did was go back to Thror, the Erebor stuff, and I took Thror's warband and just filled it with Grimhammers. I knew that I had 12 unpainted Grimhammers that I'd been itching for a reason to do, and they're great. Guardians of the King are awesome. So I was like, right, fill his warband with them, and then try and fill Thrain's warband with dwarfs, because I've already got the dwarfs painted, essentially. So if I've got to paint something, I'll paint the Grimhammers because they're quicker than Dale Warriors, and then I'll use all the Erebor dwarfs I've already got painted, and they're converted, so I really like those models. And so I got to Thrain's a Hero of Valor, so I got to about 14, and then the points just didn't quite work out. And that's the point where I fiddled with it to get the points right, and that led to me needing 2 more Dale Warriors, which are the 2 guys you saw me painting up 2 vlogs ago, essentially. So that's why that stick was what I was painting, essentially, because it was made specifically to be the models that I needed for this army list. It wasn't random and then I picked them. I'd already written the army list. So that's kind of how I came to the army and what I was gonna bring in terms of models. So there's a bit of history for you. So let's have a look at, in the next 2 weeks, what we have to do. Well, the good news is the models are done. I could go now. As I said, you've watched those last 2 vlogs. I finished the Dale army first, and then I finished the Grimhammers. They're not on bases, more on that later. But the painting's done, so that's a huge thing, right? The stress before an event. At least I don't have to paint any models. We can take that as a massive celebration. So with the army being finished, that also means I can go to Throne of Skulls, right? I can take my army at the bare minimum. So all we need to do is build, paint, and texture display board. Obviously, again, sorry, I'm not sure if I said this already, but anyone who's followed these vlogs knows I go all out for Throne of Skulls, so we've got to take a display board. So build, paint, and texture a display board. Build and paint 6 objective markers. I'm not huge on objective markers, but the main reason for doing this is to tick my hobby bingo square for objective markers, so I've got to do those. I've got to finish a costume. Oh yes, as ever, I will be going in fancy dress. Now, a little bit about fancy dress. We'll kind of reveal a few things as the vlog progresses, no doubt. But part of the reason I was put off this idea was I was kind of like, what would I go as? What would I go to Throne of Skull as? And in the past, I've done the King of the Dead, I've done Bilbo, and I've done Treebeard. And you could obviously. Also, what's lovely is there's been some guesses in the comments on previous vlogs. So I've heard guesses of Thror, Girion, and even Smaug, which I thought was quite great. And just dressing as a Dale guy didn't really appeal, and dressing as a dwarf didn't really appeal. And I was kind of, so part of it genuinely when I'm picking an army now, I'm always thinking about a costume going, well, what would be thematic? What could I dress up as, essentially? And then something struck me and I was like, oh yeah. And not only did something strike me, but it was the idea that this costume would also theme the entire project. And as soon as I came up with that, I started to think, oh, I think we're onto something here. As I said, I'm not going to say too much about that now. What I will tell you is that I've bought a squid costume. Oh yeah. Splash splash, Mr. Bond. Splash, splash. So, have a think about that. Squid costume. Go figure. So yeah, hopefully you'll see some stuff rolling out for that over the next few weeks. So yeah, I've got to do that costume. I've got to sort that costume and fix that costume. I also, and this bit makes me feel sick, I have to paint 55 Generation Shift bases. I don't have them yet, and that I want to be absolutely clear on this. This is not Matt's fault. Matt is doing me an absolute solid. Matt Davis of Generation Shift fame. I'm sure we all know him, but he's doing me an absolute solid on this, and is not only is doing me some favours. I'm sure we'll talk about when the bases arrive, but it's down to me being late essentially that he hasn't gone. But I've got 55 Generation Shift bases coming. That's a lot of bases that will take quite a lot of time to paint. So they're going to arrive at some time next week, and then I've got to get them painted. Now, in anticipation of those, what I've done, I've already told you, I haven't really talked about the display board, but it's in Erebor, so spoilers. I've started working on this. I don't really know how well that will read, but it doesn't matter too much. But what I've got here is 10 of Matt's other bases. They're different ones. These are the Raven Outpost ones. And I've started coming up with a colour scheme, basically. So I've started mucking about with lots of different ideas. And what you have on here is 11 different colours, basically 11 different colour schemes to try and make a kind of green, Erebor-y, marbly base, which is what I'm going for. And I've been writing down all the colours I use on all of them and making notes of it. So I've been testing this out so that when the 55 bases arrive, I can just start work already. I can just start going, right, I know what I'm doing, and kind of mass batch paint them. And I've got, the good news is, I think I'm there, I've got a favourite. So I've got this stick with 11 different ones, and there's basically, there is a front runner, but there's about 4 that I really like. So what I'm now going to do is paint them all black again, and then start again with those, doing kind of 3 of those 4 with a slight variation. So I'll be like, okay, so it's one of these 4, and now which one of these 3 of each 4 is it? Essentially, I'm going to experiment with that. So I'm feeling pretty good about this, because I'm like, okay, so worst comes to worst is this one. Again, I'm not sure how well it reads, but it doesn't matter at the moment. Worst comes to worst, I know what I'm doing for my bases, and I've got a kind of relatively easily replicatable colour scheme. So what I'm going to do is, as I said, once I paint these black and start again, one of the clips you'll see is once the next batch of tests are done, I'll show you. So I'll show you the kind of variations that I was working with, and then which one I finally pick with before the bases arrive. So yeah, 55 bases to paint at some point. What I've also then got to do is, you've seen me finish the Grimhammers and the Dale Warriors there, and I didn't do their bases, that's fine, I just got to kind of slide them off. I've also got to chop about 30 painted models off their existing bases, including the Dale guys, which went to Throne of Skulls. They've got to be chopped off and put onto new, those 55 bases, which it's going to take time and is also terrifying. Now the Dale guys are pretty easy because it's just their feet glued on, but all my Grimhammers, all my Warriors of Erebor, of which I need about at least another 12 I think, they've got tabs, so I've got to cut those off like painted models. I've got to cut away the base and cut away the tabs and all that. Ugh. And then once I've done those, they need to be glued onto bases, and then obviously all their feet will need touching up as well, from where I've damaged them essentially. So yeah, that's kind of what I have to do. I've also got about 30 little resin treasure chests that I bought on a whim. I don't know if anything will happen with them. They are the absolute prime example of the sort of thing that will fall by the wayside. But I've got 30. They've been sprayed. They're out in the shed, and my hope is that maybe some of them will be painted up and used on the board. But if you followed my Throne of Skulls last year, the end one, they're the very example of the kind of Isengard dam machinery or Merry and Pippin. They're the extra things that could get left behind. So that's what we've got to do. And as I said, I was meant to have 3 weeks to do this, and as it is, I've got just under 2. Now that feels icky. I'm not going to lie. I'm a bit twitchy, but I still feel as though I had more to do in the end video last year. So whilst it is tough, I'm feeling pretty good about it, if I'm honest. And more importantly, as of right now, I can't do the objective markers because I'm still waiting on them, and I can't do the bases. So it has to be the display board. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start by working on the display board. So what is the display board? Well, the first plan back in 2019 was to do the throne room of Erebor. As I mentioned, it was going to be the gifting of the Windlance, and so they were all going to be there, and that's the only place to set it. I fancied building that kind of throne room with the dwarf statues and maybe the back of it and the kind of mountain and all that. So that's what I was going to do. And when I came back to it about 2 months ago or something, I started thinking about this, and I just couldn't get my head around in a display board how to do the top of the throne room without making it look kind of crap. So if you imagine that even if you laid out all those columns, hopefully there's some pictures appearing on the screen at the moment of the throne room, but you can hopefully see the sort of thing that you could do that top bit, and almost where the picture cuts off, you'd have to have the bottom of a display board, and it'd just be black, and it wouldn't look like they kind of went down it. And I was just kind of struggling with that, and I was also conceptually struggling with the mountain. I wanted to have that big mountain that goes down to the throne kind of glowing. I thought I could put some lights in it, but I was struggling to kind of figure out how I'd support that and where the back would be, and the back panel and what would be glued to what. And I wasn't feeling kind of great about it. It was just something that wasn't working. And I think I remember having a chat I had a kind of brainstorming session with Matt Davis. And I was even talking at one point about maybe putting like a mirror at the bottom, like would a mirror work to kind of reflect the columns back up? But then we were just saying no, you just see everyone's face kind of staring down at it or whatever. But it was that kind of thing that I was playing with. And then what happened at some point, I started to think about the Dwaradelf scenery that I'd made. I said Dwaradelf, I think, for this earlier, did I? Maybe I meant the Dwimmerberg. But I started to think about the Dwaradelf scenery that I made in vlog 4. It's the kind of 3 vlogs I did about the road to the SBG DT, and I made the scenery to be used in the Escape from Dwaradelf scenario. And I started thinking about that and the way that scenery kind of ran down, and the cool element of the height of it essentially. And I started thinking, well, what if I did that? What if I actually didn't try and cut off the bottom, but what if I made the whole thing, from top to bottom? Now it's obviously vastly scaled down, but I started to think what you don't see a lot of is height on display boards. They're normally quite small and quite long, but you don't get a lot of height. And I just started to think about this idea of what if you had a display board that was potentially, I think at the time I was thinking like 12, 18, 24 inches tall, and you almost like the stairs in Fellowship, but it was a throne room of Erebor, and that I got really excited about and started doing that. And I also like the idea that it wouldn't have a back panel, and while there's obviously a front where the models are facing, I liked the idea that you could almost walk around it and see it from any angle. So I started thinking about that, like could we do a version of the throne room or something like that? And my first stumbling block was I just couldn't find. You basically need columns of polystyrene, like 2 inch by 2 inch polystyrene, and I just couldn't find any. I couldn't find any that you could buy in mass in those numbers, and I don't have a reliable way of cutting that much polystyrene. I just don't have it. So what I decided to do was reach out to Zahir Khares. Now Zahir, we've praised before. He's the person on those hobby vlogs who sorted me. He said he makes this stuff. He makes Dwaradelf scenery. He makes Moria scenery. He makes anything you want really, and he vlogs it. And we got the Dwaradelf scenery for the SPG photo shoot, and it's brilliant. And I've shown it off in vlogs before. If you want to go see it, check out vlog number 4. I think it is. It's where it's really shown off. He does this brilliant scenery. It's really affordable. He's a great guy. And I suddenly thought, hang on, he's got it. He's got a way at least of making scenery of the right thickness. So I got in touch with him and basically said, I've got this idea. Any chance you could make something like this custom, basically? And he said, yeah, well, let me know what you're thinking. So I started doing just that. Again, hopefully we'll start to see some pictures appearing now, but I started sketching out a plan for kind of roughly how big I wanted it to be. I was concentrating on the height, and the main thing was to try and kind of keep, have enough space to be able to go downstairs from the top to the bottom, basically on this kind of height thing. And it all kind of wrote itself after a while. That every staircase is like 6 inches high, so that means you can only go up to 18 inches with 3 if you're going around 3 times, and all that sort of stuff. And I was playing around with that and playing around with some of the loose pieces of Dwaradelf I had, and I did all these sketches, and I did a floor plan of how I wanted to look, and then I kind of messaged Zahir and went, right, let's talk. And we had this great Zoom call, this wonderful Zoom call where I kind of knocked ideas about, right, this is what I want. I have no idea if this I'm not a designer or anything, and I was like, I hope that this gets across the idea. And he was like, yeah, that's cool. And so we played around with it a bit, and we changed a few designs, changed a few bits of it, and then he mocked it up and kind of sent me these pictures, which again hopefully will be on the screen now. And that kind of blew me away, because I was like, yes, that's the thing that was in my head, and it looks right. And so he was like, yeah, cool, I can, I'll chop you up the bits for this, basically. And so then he potted off, and then not long after, this arrived. Oh my yes. So then what Zahir has basically done is sent me a Lego kit. So I've got staircases with arches, I've got columns, I've got small arches, stairs. I'll just get one of the bigger pieces out. And I've got big arch pieces like this kind of thing. So yeah, he sent me all these pieces, like this kind of fun, best Lego kit ever. I was like, right, here you go, here's a bunch of arches. See if you can glue it all together and turn it into something. And that was absolutely brilliant. So this has all arrived along with my plan. I've got a baseboard, which is this. It's the same stuff that I used to attach my Dwyer Elf to in the previous one. I went down to my local timber merchants and got this cut to size. And then what I'm going to do, again, if you're familiar with Hobbylog 4, you will have seen this before. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to drill through this under each column. I'm going to put a cocktail stick up through it for stability. And then I'm going to be plonking down this. You can sort of start to see the width of it. I think that bit goes there. So it's going to be that way around, basically. So obviously wider than it is deep, which is what you'd expect for a display board. And yeah, so hopefully those pieces will now be glued together. As I said, best Lego kit ever. Glue it together and make the kind of shape of the throne room, basically. Then, once I've done that, I'm going to build mountains of gold at the back of the board to have treasure in. I found some fun guides online about how to make treasure piles. I've got some glitter, I've got some glitter glue, and I've got some glitter paint. So lots of fun with glitter to be had. But what I'm basically going to do is have mounds of treasure on the back of the board. Now I know you might think that Thrall kept his stuff in order, and I did go and look at the prologue, and I did wonder if Smaug just knocked all the gold over, so the mountains only appear when he arrives. But there's a clear shot where Thorin's looking at Thrall when he's going a bit mad, and there are just piles and piles of gold, as well as the kind of neat stacks. So there's definitely parts of Erebor that have piles of gold, and I'm willing to have a bit of artistic license on that and just say yes, he had lots and lots of piles of gold. So that's what I'm going to build up. Once everything's glued down, I'm going to use kind of foam, build up the back to make some mountains, and then cover that with filler and texture paint, and then gold, and then glitter. And I've also got I've got thousands and thousands of rhinestones, like for gems, which I'm going to glue in. I have no idea if it will look good, but as I said, I found this kind of tutorial about treasure piles online, and it looks pretty cool. So I'm going to try and replicate that. And then that's the board basically, and then obviously I'll just keep adding little bonuses to it until we run out of time. Now the plan is that's what I'm starting with. That's the board we're making. That's the first bit we're doing, and I've got 2 weeks. If I can get it built and textured in a week, I think we'll be alright. That's where I need to be. It's Saturday night, so by next Saturday I feel like if it's all built and covered in filler or covered in texture paint and ready to be painted, we've got a chance of doing it in time. If it's not done by that point, I think we're in real trouble, because week 2, so much of that is going to be the bases. It's going to be doing those bases, and whilst I've got a bit of time this weekend, I don't have much time next weekend, and then suddenly that week we are just into 4 evening territory essentially, and I know I'm going to be panicking about painting bases and chopping my models up and all that sort of stuff. So that's what we're that's the first goal essentially, to get that done. So there you go. That's laying out this vlog. And I know this intro bit in itself has been quite long, but I think it's necessary. I hope you're enjoying this already, and I hope it sets up what we're going to be doing for the next couple of weeks. That's what we're going to try and do. I hope this will be one vlog, because it's not going to come out before Throwing Skulls, because I don't want to spoil anything. But I'd like it all to be in one place. But it's likely to be very long. So if it becomes completely untenable, this might become a kind of part 1 and part 2. But I don't know that yet. Maybe it's week 1 and week 2 by the time the footage comes in. But that's where we are basically. I'm about to spend a week doing all the messy stuff. So for the people who love to see me sobbing, freezing, late at night, bleeding in a shed, this first week is for you guys, because I am about to get very, very messy with saws and glue and polyfiller and hide in the garden at night when the wolves are after me. So yeah, here we go. 2 weeks to go to Throwing Skulls. That's what I've got to do. Wish me luck. Let's go! Okay, so it's update time. To give you some idea, it's 2 days afterwards. So yeah, I think I was recording on Saturday and it's Monday night. And what you can see in front of you is the baseboard that I held up that was already cut out, and I have now marked out where the board is going to be. I don't know if you can see these pencil lines, but it doesn't really matter if you can. It should look like a whole bunch of squares on it. And I have drilled through the board and inserted these plastic cocktail sticks into it, which you can hopefully see sticking up. Anyone who watched my vlog, was it Hobby Vlog 4? I can't remember which one it was, where I was building the Dwarrowed Elf, will have seen something very, very similar to this. This is the same thing I did before. These are just being stuck in there to add stability. And then right here, I've got all my pieces, and I've drilled holes into the bottom of them. You probably can't see that because the holes look white. And so these are now going to slot onto these cocktail sticks and be put into position. So I just thought while it was here in all its pieces, I'd kind of show you my little Lego set that I got from Zahir. I've got most of it here, but I've got a couple of these small arches. You've obviously seen the screenshots come up in that intro segment about what it's meant to look like. Got these pieces, I've then got a single column. I've then got this big set of 2 arches. This really long 2 arch pieces, sorry, it's going to be the front of the board, and then the biggest piece, which is this one, with the 4 different arches, which is going to be the back of the board. So, and then as well as those, I've got a bunch of staircases. So I've got this kind of particularly cool staircase, which has got an arch built into it to be, it's kind of going to slot onto here essentially, and then go up some stairs. And I've also put some spikes into here. That's if you can see a little blue spike. Maybe if I hold it up like that, you'll be able to see a blue cocktail stick, and that's basically going to push into here, something like that, to just give that a bit of support in there when it goes in. But yeah, so I've got 2 of those, and then I've also elsewhere I've got 4 more sets of stair pieces, which I'm going to add on, but I haven't got them out because they're not going to be glued down at this point. But there we go. That's what I've got. That's what I've got so far. I'm now going to glue this down. I'm going to try and. I haven't measured it. I haven't dry fitted anything. But if we took the, let's just see. Let's do this for the first time live. See if we can get this to fit. There we go. That first piece goes on, and I'm now going to kind of slot it together and build it all and glue it into place, and see what we come up with, and hopefully our measurements have been alright, and we can make it all pretty solid. Yeah, and I'm going to leave it to dry overnight. So that's the plan. So my hope is we'll come back and we'll show you what it looks like when it's all assembled. But yeah, I just wanted to say a massive, massive shout out to Zahir. You're going to see, obviously, you're going to see his work throughout this this vlog as we keep painting it. So it's not like I only have to show it off once, but I'm going to put all his details down below. If you do fancy getting yourself some Middle Earth scenery, you could do much worse than giving him a call, because his stuff's just great. So yeah, here we go. Time to glue it together and hope that the vision comes together kind of quickly. We'll see. Okay, and here we go. It is the next day, and this is it all glued down, and I have to say I'm pretty damn impressed. So this is what we've got. Obviously you can see me for scale, but I've also put Jeff the Grimhammer up here for scale, but this is the thing completely glued together, and I think it's looking pretty damn good. This is super cool because obviously, as much as you've seen those kind of concept drawings, this is the first time I'm seeing the thing actually all laid out and assembled, sort of particularly with these staircases here, which are kind of floating staircases. So seeing it all assembled and knowing, yeah, that's exactly what I planned. So when I was chatting through with Zahir, I was like, yes, this is exactly what it looks like, and he's just done a banging job. I was terrified that the way I kind of drilled through the board, and measured out all the blocks and put the cocktail sticks up, and then put the holes in the bottom of the polystyrene, that it wasn't going to it wouldn't in some way line up, and that everything would be on a bit of an angle. But I've got to say, I'm really, really impressed. I think it's looking pretty damn good. So we've got the front on sort of geometric thing, and hopefully you're obviously seeing it in perspective, but the idea is that column all lines up here, these columns line up here, and these staircases line up with these columns. Seems to have worked pretty well. And similarly we get this sort of thing where it should now kind of get this lining up with this and lining up with this one, and so on and so forth. So we get that. It looks pretty good to me. You know, it's obviously not spot on dwarf engineering because of, you know, I've made some subtle small mistakes and stuff, and just the slight variations you get in the bender polystyrene. But I've got to say, I'm pretty damn pleased with this. This one here should now hopefully kind of be blocking this staircase. You see what I mean? If you line those sort of things up, the perspective, let's say, is screwing things a bit. But I've got to say, I'm really happy, and it's super cool seeing it all kind of properly laid out. It's all pretty solid now as well. You can't, you know, it's still polystyrene, it's still light, you can smash into it, but you could now certainly balance models on it, and I wouldn't be too worried. I haven't mentioned this, but I am going to be magnetising it, just with little circles, because carrying it around Warhammer World, I'm not trusting to leave models on here. So yeah, I'll be putting down little magnetic circles and magnetising the bases. I'm sure more on that in the future. But yeah, I have to say I'm really pleased with this. I think there's more space down here than I envisaged. It's fine, but I think if I had more time, I would have put in some, I don't know, some sort of dwarven architecture or something down there, or furniture or something. But I just there's no way I've got time for that. But as it turns out, I've got 55 models, and they're clearly not all going to fit on these walkways. So I think I'll need some of this space down here to put models on. So that's that. The next stage, which is tonight, is now I've got all this, I'm going to basically build up here myself more polystyrene to make the treasure mounts. So it's going to be about up to the height of this, and it's going to be all this area around the back, and I'm just going to build up some chunks of polystyrene and try and carve it into shape all around this back half. So there's a big mound of kind of golden treasure down the back. I'm thinking it will have to stop about here and about here, so that I can kind of carry the board. I know it's a strange consideration, but that's what I'm thinking, that I need to be able to hold it on the sides to carry it. So that's what I'm going for, and that'll be tonight, which is going to be my first night in the shed. I know you guys like this stuff, so I'll be heading out to the shed tonight to do not the bad night, not the worst night. I think tonight will be quite fun, just carving up some polystyrene and sticking it in place. It's tomorrow night that's going to be bad. It's tomorrow night that's going to be the long night of polyfiller in this bad boy. But you know, that's a problem for another day, such as tomorrow. But for now, I'm really chuffed. I'm just really happy with how this has all turned out. I will say, before I go any further, that there's one thing that you might be thinking, that this is obviously, as I hope you can see, what we've made is the throne room of Thror, and as of yet there is no throne. So we need to put something on there, and for that I'm going to cut away now. So yes, let's talk thrones. Throne skulls after all. But as I said in the last clip, there's no throne at the moment, and you kind of need a throne. I reckon I could probably get away without it, but it's clear where it's meant to be in Erebor, and you need a throne. Now, hopefully you can see the image on screen, you can see the sort of throne. It's very specific, it's not just a chair. And one of the kind of headaches for me was what I was going to do about this. Now, before everyone screams at me, there's a really good, cheap 3D printed version available. I might pop a picture of it on the screen possibly. But I've got no problem with 3D printing. I like 3D printing, I think it's useful, but because I'm going to Warhammer World, I don't mind 3D printed barrels and, you know, walls and things like that, but it's pretty clear that this is a, you know, whatever, the Weta, New Line, whatever it is, Warner's piece of IP that I imagine GW aren't happy is on sale. And so I was a bit twitchy about using this on a board that's going to appear at Warhammer World, essentially. Bear in mind, the entire point that I'm doing this, the whole reason that I'm putting all this effort into the board, is to try and get a Best Army nomination, as always. And there's just part of me that thinks there's potential here that if I put what they deem to be an IP infringing product on the top, that they might not want to show it off, whatever. So I might be being cautious, but I just kind of think it's their house, their rules. So in terms of going to a GW event, it's not something I particularly like to encourage. So with that out of the way, the only option I had really was to build one. And the hardest thing had to come up with was what material I would build it out of, because kind of foam board, it's meant to look, you know, really sharp and geometric, and foam board just isn't gonna, I'm not good enough with it. And then what do you do, like thinner plastic hard, and I didn't really have that. I didn't have anything to cut it sharp, and so I was thinking about this for a while, and I ended up settling on, are you ready? This. Oh yes, it's Lego. So I dug into our Lego spares box and built this, which I'm kind of happy with. It's got the kind of points and the shapes of the dwarven architecture, and it's a rough approximation of what appears in the movie. And I kind of made the idea. It's kind of set to scale. I haven't actually got a model here to hand, but you know, it gives a rough idea, I think, of what the throne of Thor should have been. And I think it's all right thickness. The only bit where you can really see the thickness is here, and I think it's all right. I don't think it's too bad. And so I've built this. I've even made this enclosure for the Arkenstone. I'm going to put a gem in there when it's finished to be the Arkenstone. And what I plan to do is to now kind of cover this in polyfiller to get rid of all the very clearly, you know, Lego shapes and kind of make it into one. Maybe cover it in textured paint. And then my thinking is that should hopefully hide that it's Lego and should just make it a kind of generic shape. But yeah, I wanted to kind of show this off before I put it in, because that's my wacky idea. And this is exactly the right width for that column, that single column that's at the back of the board. So is this mad? I don't know. It could be crazy, but it also could be genius. So that's my plan. And what I'm also going to do is glue it for the very first time. What's the thing from the Lego movie with the, I can't remember what the name of super glue is. But obviously I don't want this kind of falling apart or being knocked over. So I am going to glue this together. I just wanted to spend a bit of time with it to make sure I was happy with the overall shape, and I think this is what I'm going with. So that was a fun kind of hour digging around in our Lego box and kind of playing with different designs and stuff. But this is what I've gone with, and this is going to be my throne of Erebor. So hopefully you'll see that soon on one of the wider shots or something. But yeah, hopefully that's kind of cool, and it's good to get a bit of Lego involved in the project. All right, so let's talk bases for a while. In the intro clip to the vlog, or the long half an hour chat, I waved this stick around showing you that I'd done some demo bases, and I believe I said that I was going to then kind of set them back to black and try and kind of work on the ones I really liked. And this is the result of that. So this is my stick, having tried out the kind of best base schemes I came up with, and this is what I've come up with. So we have 4 different colours here. Now I grant you, as I'll explain more, that the 4 different colours might all look very similar, and more on that in a minute. But that's what I've got. So, what we've got here is they're all spray black. A was dry brushed Eshin grey, Caliban green, and Sons of Horus green. So that's a kind of dark grey and then a couple of greens. B was dry brushed Caliban green, so you don't get the dark grey to begin with. Then Dawnstone, so a pale grey, and then Nurgling green. So this starts from a darker grey. This introduces a lighter grey. C was dry brush Caliban green, Sons of Horus green, and Nurgling green. So that was all greens, no greys. And D was dry brushed. It actually has an extra colour. So it was Vulcan green, then Caliban green, then Sons of Horus green, then Nurgling green. Okay, so that was the base coats for them. Then they were all given a wash of BL Tan green. And then they were all dry brush Sons of Horus green and Nurgling green. And this is what we end up with. And don't worry about the kind of little red and green bits, because more on those in a minute. But this is different. So in theory, this one should look a little darker grey. And as ever, we never know quite how well the colours are going to match on the camera. I think they're all looking a bit greyer and less green than they do in person, but you know, hopefully it gets an idea. Now, as I said, bear in mind, you might not be seeing much difference at all on the camera here. It might well look all the same, but they have all been given the same wash and the same last 2 dry brushes. That's going to give a kind of similar approach. What's really annoying to me is D, of the 11 different ones I tried to begin with, D was my front runner, because D is meant to look like this. Now again, this probably looks exactly the same to you, but this one here was the one I really liked from the first stick, and this is exactly the same colour scheme. And I don't know how well you can see, but it just doesn't look the same. Who knows? This is the classic thing about anything involving dry brushing or washing. We just don't know why, but I prefer, this is still my favourite of all these bloody ones. The one from the first stick is my favourite, but this is exactly the same as this one down the front. And certainly, I don't know how it looks on screen, but certainly in my hand, this looks much nicer. It's a lot kind of darker and more subtle than this one. But what can you do? The other thing I've got going on in here, as I said, can you see these kind of bright green and red bits? These might seem strange. I can see them on here, but this is the kind of marbling effect. And I went and watched the Weta documentary, and was really kind of surprised that the way they did the Erebor marble is just this. It's a green rock, and then they kind of sprayed lines of bright green and bright red and bright orange down it. And so I was like, well, okay, that's not what I would have done, but I'll go with it to try and replicate it. And I've messed around with a few different things on this on the bases, but what I ended up doing was painting really thin white lines over the dry brush, and then painting a couple of technical paints in. I played around with loads and loads of washes and loads of contrast paints and stuff, but I ended up going with Hexwraith Flame and Blood for the Blood God. So it's a kind of bright shiny green and a bright shiny red, and you can hopefully see them in there. Now, you notice I've got 4 different letters here, 4 different types of bases, and there's 2 on each, and the difference is the ones at the front had that marbling effect done before the wash, and the ones at the back had it done after the wash. So what you should get is the fact that you can see the marbling better on the ones at the back. Hopefully, if you see there, this should be more overt, this should be knocked back. And I just wanted to experiment with that to see how it looks better. And I think this is a really good example where what I've decided to do is go with this one. So I had to go with the front, because the kind of sticky blood nature of kind of Blood for the Blood God here, when it's on top of the wash and it's just had a couple of dry brushes over, I still think it looks like blood potentially on the stones. Whereas once it's behind the wash here, I think what it does is add a kind of nice subtle extra bit of kind of red colour into the bases, which is more what I was going for. So having played around with all these, I've decided to go with C. I've decided to go with the front. So this is my finished Erebor rock effect. So it was a choice. Having gone with the front, it's a choice between one of these. And yeah, I'm going with this one. Now, ideally, as I said, I'd really like to go with this one. But, what can you do? I mean, I get it. It looks exactly the same there, but I promise it doesn't look exactly the same in person. They're far, far greener. Funny old world, isn't it? This just looks completely grey holding it there now, but I promise you, this is just dark green. It's crazy. I think we're getting closer there potentially to what the colour's like. Who knows? So yeah, that's what I'm going with. Now the reason for this, I'd like to thank the members of Base Club, who are Dan Collister, Tom Harrison and Matt Davies, who are people that I was kind of chatting to about the bases and kind of asking their opinion throughout. And they kind of voted. And C got the most votes. But also, in terms of the colouring, crucially, these 3 all have 3 layers, and this one has got 4 layers. So whilst that one was my favourite, this is D, remember, if this didn't look significantly better than this, I was always going to pick this, because this one needs an extra layer. And bear in mind, I'm painting 55 bases, so that's a significant time investment. So that's the main reason I've discarded this one and gone for this one. It was always going to be between these 2, but I'm going for C because it's got 1 less colour. I don't need the Vulcan green. Now, obviously, that means when I'm painting 55 bases, I've got 55 bases to dry brush once less. But also, remember, I'm going to be using exactly this colour scheme for the Erebor rock. For the whole display board. So if I've got 1 less colour to dry brush over that whole down display board, so much the better. The other thing on that is that for getting my paint for the display board, I'm going to be going over to Homebase and getting some test pots mixed. So I'm not going to be using the little Citadel colours here, because what am I going to need? I'm going to need Caliban green and Sons of Horus green and Nurgling green is what I'm going to need. And I'm not going to be trying to dry brush that thing with tiny little pots like this. I'm going to go and do some colour match. And if I pick C, I've only got to get those 3. If I pick D, I've got to get a tub of Vulcan green as well. So there's an added cost to that. So that's what I'm going to be doing. This is my final base scheme. I'm going to be trying to paint 55 of those up, and it's going to be, they're going to be sprayed black, dry brush Caliban green, dry brush Sons of Horus green, dry brush Nurgling green, white lines painted on them, Hexrace flame painted on them, blood for the blood god painted on them, washed Bieltan green, and then dry brush Taurus green and Nurgling green. Easy, right? Only 55 to go. Okay, so it's a day later, and I just want to do a brief update that, as you can see now, what we have added is the Great Treasure Hoard of Thrall. So this is what I've added to the board. You can see it here and here. Kind of added these blocks of polystyrene. It's actually the same sort of polystyrene that Zahir used for these blocks. Just sheets of 50mm, and you basically got one here and then another one stacked on top of it, and then a little middle bit put in here. So I've put that in and basically just built this kind of hill of gold up around. I'll spin the whole thing around so we can sort of see how it fits. Somewhere like that. You can see it kind of sloping down there. I always wanted to have the big mound of treasure there. I've got loads of jewels and loads of kind of glitter to try and make a hopefully cool looking treasure pile sometime next week. It's a bit tricky of knowing how far to make it. Obviously here it's basically vertical. I think it might be a bit high in terms of like just looking at the models, but I wanted it to be roughly the same height as this, so you can have the model standing on it staring at it. And I think I mentioned before in the vlog, sorry if I'm repeating myself, that it is messy at this point. There's a scene with Thrall kind of wandering around the bottom with big piles of gold. I'm not sure if they're possibly this big, but I think it's cool, and I don't really care if it's a bit over the top. It's done now, and more importantly, it's all glued on, so there's nothing I can do about it. So that's what I'm kind of going with. So I've kind of built that up there. Here, go from that way, so we can take it around here. I'll show you on this side. So there we go. That's the other bit that you won't have seen. So yeah, that's what I kind of did last night, built all that up, and so now that is the board as it currently stands, and it is ready to be polyfillared. So I'm now going to take this bad boy, something like that, take this bad boy down to the shed, and I have to try and get it all coated in polyfiller. Oh yes, that's right, my cherubs. It's shed o'clock. It's dark, it's wet, it's extremely cold, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get this done. Actually, most of that isn't true. I just recorded that for the trailer. As it turns out, here I am in the shed. I know you guys have been waiting for it. It's actually quite pleasant. It's quite mild. I wouldn't say it's cold at all. It's not even raining. It was raining earlier in the day, but it's not raining now. It is, however, dark, but it's also not crazy late. So at the current time it's 9:30 at night. So I've been able to get out here relatively early in the evening. Still a very strange situation to sit down in the garden on your own, but here I am at a fairly healthy time of evening. And I've got this bad boy right here ready to be polyfilled. I've got a whole box of polyfiller, a big bottle of water, and we've got to try and cover this thing in polyfiller. The treasure piles to kind of smooth them over, and the kind of columns of Erebor to get rid of the polystyrene appearance and to kind of seal them a bit. So that's the goal for tonight. As I said, it's only 9:30, so this is relatively chipper shed business. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 2 hours, but I'm thinking if I can get this done in 2 hours and be finished by 11:30, that seems A, kind of realistic and doable, but B, not too bad. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm not naive to the fact that this is very, very complicated. Normally I'm just slapping filler on over a wall or a big cliff, whereas here there's lots and lots of columns to go around, and so it might take longer than normal, but I'm still feeling pretty positive about things. So yeah, I'm going to crack on with this, and then I hope to come back to you later tonight when this whole damn thing is covered in polyfiller, but we shall see. Here we go. Boom, boom, boom. So we are back. It's done. Check it out, the whole thing is now covered in polyfiller. I'm very happy. No massive problems came out, and I've just checked the time. You wouldn't believe it. It's 11:40. So I was hoping for 11:30. I was hoping it took 2 hours. It took 2 hours 10 minutes, and I'm really pleased with that. So yeah, it's not too late. It's still not too cold. I'm going to pack up now and take this inside. But yeah, overall, really pleased with it. We'll have to see how it looks in the morning for the finished effect. But I've done what I need to do. As ever now, anyone who's followed my kind of shed-based vlogs before will know the big terrifying thing is if it will dry quickly enough. So I'm going to take this into the warm house and hope that it dries solid overnight. Then tomorrow, what we'll be doing is sanding it down, and then maybe even chucking some paint on it. To give you some idea, it's currently Wednesday night, and if you remember, I think I started recording on Saturday saying that it needed to be ready for painting by next Saturday. Now it's essentially 1 day away from being ready for painting, so really good progress on that. But I don't have Friday night, Saturday night or Sunday night. We're going away for the weekend, and then we've got the stream on Sunday night, so I've really only got tomorrow night, Thursday night, to get it ready for that point. And then obviously it goes without saying that after Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 nights to then paint the whole thing and texture it. So really pleased. It couldn't have gone any better so far, but that's not to say that we're not extremely up against it. So yeah, there we go. Really happy. It's gone really well. I'm going to try and take it inside now without dropping it in the garden in the dark and destroying it. But there we go. We've had a night in the shed. I hope you've enjoyed it. It might be the only one. I'm not sure if we're going to do any more shed-based stuff, to be honest. But there you go. I hope you enjoyed your annual trip to my shed. And yeah, really positive. So sorry, disappointing. I'm not even bleeding. Okay, so here we go. It is the next day, and I'm delighted to say that things have gone well. The polyfiller dried completely solid, rock hard, and what I've now done is sand the whole thing down. So that's gone brilliant. It's now sanded, it's now textured and sanded down. So it is ready for painting, which is cool. So the first step on this is going to be to just chuck 2 base colours on it. I'm going to paint all the rock black, and I'm going to paint all the gold areas gold. And my hope is to get that done today. And if I get that done by the end of the day, it's the Thursday before Throne of Skulls, it'll be good. Now there's also a slim chance, maybe dare to dream, I could actually get that done slightly earlier in the day, and then even start dry brushing it tonight. So maybe I'll check back in at the end of the evening and show you what it looks like, and it might have even gone gold, black, and then green again, which would be pretty cool. And once that's done, we can then start making a plan for the final week and the last push. What I do need to do though is go and pick up my paints. So I'm gonna take over my little test card of Sons of Horus green, Nurgling green, and I think it's Caliban green. Take them over to home base and get my little test bots mixed up, ready to actually paint this bad boy. So yeah, all is going very well. Let's go! Alright, so time for a brief update. Here we go. Ta-da! It is base coated. As you can see, I think you saw it just after it had been sanded down, but it's now had a base coat all over it, and it is now ready for painting. I'm going to spin it around so you can see the 2 colours. There's only 2 colours I've done. I've done all of the brickwork is in black. It's actually Night Jewels 1 is my Dulux colour for that, and then I painted the treasure piles in a gold, and for that I used this kind of cool Rust-Oleum Universal metallic paint, and it was gold. It's a little tin I got from home base. It's nice. It's done a really nice bright gold to be the base of the treasure. I'll have to touch up the gold, you know, in a night or 2 once I've done all the dry brushing, obviously, because there's going to get lots of paint in it. But I just wanted to get a big blocky gold colour down there in the background. So there we go. This is where I wanted it to be. I can't remember which clip it was in. Maybe the first clip. But I said if by Saturday it was at this point, like kind of base coated and ready to, or not even base coated, I just said ready for painting, I'll be in a good position. As it turns out, it's Thursday. It's Thursday night, so I'm ahead of my target. But what I will tell you is, having kind of thought about things for a while and planned things out, that target was I don't know what the word would be, almost too optimistic. In the sense that it didn't need to be ready for Saturday. It kind of needed to be ready for, well, if I'm brutally honest, 2 days ago. I think I need 7 painting sessions on this, and if a painting session is an evening, I've got 5 left. I'm actually away for the weekend, so I'm actually getting a bit twitchy about it, just in terms of how long I think it's going to take. Just base coating it kind of made me realise how complicated this is. Even though it's all just one colour largely, it's really tough to get everywhere and to get the paint onto everything. And I've got to do lots and lots of different layers on it. So I'm just, I think I'm used to kind of just painting my display boards in the last couple of evenings because they'll normally just rock, but there's tons and tons of different angles and different bits to get into on here. So that's going to provide a challenge. I've been over to Homebase and I've got my 3 colours. I've got my Caliban Green, Sons of Horus Green and Nurgling Green ready for dry brushing, and I'm now going to get stuck into that tonight. Now what I don't know, it needs to be dry brushed with all those 3 colours. Those are the next stages, but what I don't know is how long this takes to dry brush. I've really just got no idea. Is it going to be kind of half an hour? Is it going to be an hour and a half? I really don't know, but that's what I've got to do. I'm going to get stuck in and do that first heavy dry brush of Caliban Green on here, and then kind of start planning the rest of my week out from that, really. But there we go. I'm really happy. I think it looks cool, but we're now going to get stuck into adding some colour in it, and hopefully, I'm not quite sure when the next time you'll see it will be because it tends to come together quite quickly, but it should look significantly greener next time you see it. Ta-da! It's green! I promise it's green. Looking at the screen at the moment on my little review screen, it looks quite grey, but I promise you, it's green. So here it is. It is the next day, and after a long night of dry brushing, I'm very happy with where we got to. So I've got my little colour sheet here, boom, 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 which are my 3 colours I got done, which are Caliban Green, Sons of Horus Green and Nurgling Green. Got them mixed up in Homebase and then dry brushed the heck out of this thing. It did take a long time. I think in my last clip I said I don't know how long it's going to take. The first one, which is obviously the heavy one, turning it from black to green, took about an hour and a half. It's not necessarily the size of the board, but it's the fact that you've got to, there's all these columns that you've got to get all 4 sides of essentially. So it takes a long time. But the next 2 were quicker. The next 2 took under an hour, possibly like 45 minutes each or something, but still it's at least the best part of 3 hours of dry brushing last night. But I stuck at it. I finished quite late, and I'm really pleased that I did. I really like the colour of it. It's a good match. I'm very pleased with the colour matching from Homebase, because it does look like the way the trial bases I've done have looked. So I think there'll be a good match there. And I am happy, and it's given me a chance. I'm still, I think I talked about in my last clip how freaked out I'm getting about the timing, but whilst I'm still freaked out about it, doing all this dry brushing last night has given me a chance, and what I now need to figure out is how and when I'm going to do the marbling and the washing, because I think there's at least a full kind of evening's work on marbling, a full evening's work on washing, and then more dry brushing over one evening. So that's 3 evenings, and I've only got kind of 1 evening left before I need to start texturing it, really, and that's because it's currently Friday, and I'm going to stay with my parents for a couple of nights, and then we've got a stream on Sunday. So I'm thinking I might have to take this to my parents along with some brushes to do the marbling effect there, possibly late one night, which I don't really want to do because I want to chill out, but I think that might be inevitable. The other thing is, it's Friday, so this means we're kind of halfway through. I started recording on Saturday, and in a week's time I hope I will be packing up the car and heading to Throne of Skulls with everything finished. At the moment, it goes without saying, I'm a long way to go, but I think we can be very happy with how far we've come in a week. So there's no progress on the bases, on the real bases. I've obviously settled on my test scheme. The objectives have been made but not started painting, and but as you can see, most of the work has been done on this. So I'm pretty happy. I think I've done more on it than I could have hoped I would have done in this period, but that still doesn't mean that I'm not very, very twitchy about the ability to get it all finished. So there we go. I hope that gives you a kind of decent update on where things are. And I think, one way or the other, I think you'll now see it again, possibly when it's all completely painted, because I think I'm going to be trying to sneak in bits and bobs here and there at my parents' where I might not necessarily have the camera. So I think when it comes back, it might look fairly similar to this, but it would have had all the marbling painted on it, then washed with Bieltan green, and then two layers of dry brush done over the top of that. But yeah, so there we go. That's progress for the minute. Pretty happy. But we need to crack on now. Let's go. Okay, so it's got time to have a little chat about objective markers, and here they are. Boom. Still got my spray stick, but hopefully we can see 4 of them here. So what we have are Dwarf Kings and a bonus Dane on the Mines of Moria columns. Now, more on these on quite a while. It's those models, isn't it? But the primary reason for these, rather than just to stress myself out with something else that I have to do, I've got 2 more because I've got six. I said 6. Is that I need to do some objectives for Hobby Bingo. So one of the kind of squares to tick off on Hobby Bingo is create objectives. So it kind of makes sense to do it here. And then when you think about what objectives to do for Erebor, I came fairly naturally to the idea of statues that I could incorporate into the board. And then from there it was, again, fairly easy. Once again, the same sort of thing I said with the throne and the 3D printing. If you're going to go big on it at Throne of Skulls, you kind of want them to be GW bits. So I went with the columns and the ancient Dwarf King models. And I have to say some massive shout outs and thank yous to a few people. Michael Haskell sent me the columns. I had 2, but I needed 6, so he sent me a set of 4 to use, and he also sent me a set of the Dwarf Kings. So the 4 metal Dwarf Kings, there's 3 of them on this stick, came from Michael. So a massive thanks to Michael Haskell for those. And then Max Malice sent me the last Dwarf King, so it's a repeat of this guy here, and some nourishing Twinkies to keep me going. So thanks to Max. And I've also got, they haven't arrived yet, but I've got some 40mm bases coming from Will Champion of 7 City Collectibles. So these, what is going to be interesting about these is the reason I can just grab them. They're not circular. I've gone for square ones. I've gone for the old fantasy ones because I'm going to be placing these on one of the walkways on the board. And circular bases just look weird, given that all the walkways are square and straight lines, and these are all square. So he's dug out 6 40mm old fantasy bases to glue these to. So thanks to Max, Michael, and Will for contributing to this. It's awesome. And then also, because I needed 6, I ended up digging up Danes. This is the old, what is this? Old Dane as opposed to new old Dane. The old Dane model that I had lying around in my collection. I've got absolutely no plans for this model. I couldn't even tell you why I've got it. I've got Barlin in Finecast as well for some reason. In fact, do you know what? He's here. And as you can see, he's had an even worse life because his axe head was cut off to give young Barlin Durin's axe many years ago for SPG magazine. I'm not sure why I got these. They were obviously the twin pack that I got at some point, but I've got no plans for them. And obviously these days, whilst it is a cool model, if I was ever going to use Old Dane, I would use new Old Dane, or I would use young Dane or something. So I'm never ever going to use this model. And he's now not, he doesn't look like a dwarf out of the kind of Peter Jackson adaptations now, so I think he works as a kind of generic old dwarf king. And also, in good B-Sime style, it's another model out of my backlog done. It won't count as painted, but because scenery models never count for me, but it will count as removed, so that's cool as well. So yeah, that's how I came up with the 6 of these guys. So massive thanks to the guys who helped. In terms of putting them on, whilst most of these guys are metal, what I decided to do, you won't be able to see it at the moment, but you shouldn't be able to see, is that I cut the metal tab but left little bits of it coming out of each foot, and then drilled holes in the column, so they have kind of tabs or pins going down into the column to kind of keep them in place, because I thought just 2 tiny dwarf metal feet glued on top will be horribly treacherous. So yeah, they've got a bit of added support in there. They are one colour in. I'm doing this exactly the same colour scheme that I'm doing on my display board and on my bases. So all they've been done is dry brush Caliban green. The reason I'll show you them now is just because when they were black, they didn't show up very well on camera. So I decided to just do one dry brush to kind of show the details, and they stand out a bit more. So there we go. Those are going to be my 6 objectives. They are assembled. They are well on the way, and they're just waiting for Will's bases now to glue on. And you'll be seeing this long after our next stream. But my plan at the moment is that I will be working on these guys on our Two Towers 20th anniversary stream, which. So we'll have to wait and see if that comes to pass. But there we go. That's the objective markers, which I hadn't shown you up until this point. I've got one more thing I want to show you in a very similar light, which is this bad boy. Remember this? This is our throne we made, and you might have noticed if we're looking at the kind of work in progress on the board that it's not on the board. And the reason for that is that I thought. The way I was heavily dry brushing the board and kind of tipping the board up to kind of get to different angles, this adds an extra bit of height to it that I was kind of just worried I would just snap it off essentially. So I decided to keep this on a kind of painting handle and just paint it up with the Citadel paints as opposed to the home base emulsion paints. What I'm going to do is once it's been washed, I'll then glue it on and do the final dry brushes with the emulsion paints just to kind of tie it into those to that colour scheme as well. But yeah, here we go. I think it's not done a bad job. You haven't seen it since it's been covered. I put polyfiller on it and I covered it in texture paint, and I don't think it's done a bad job of getting away from Lego. I tried to kind of cover up the gaps. You never kind of know how too much to put on. You can still see the little slots here which kind of give it away. These little gaps here, but let's be honest, I don't really care. But it's not, as soon as you kind of got a bit of texture on it and you filled in a few of those gaps, I don't think it's overtly Lego anymore. Is it? I guess we'll see. But I think it looks kind of cool, and I'm committed now anyway. I think I changed this. I think maybe last time you saw it, did it still have a kind of like almost flower shape that I changed what I wanted to do with that. I just put this little square one on here, and I'm going to put the Arkenstone onto that once it's finished. So there we go, still working on that as well. So yeah, there we go. There's a bit of an update on a few of those bits, and yeah, on we go. Okay, so I thought I'd just take a brief break from the stress of all the hobbying to talk about something kind of fun about the weekend, which is about what I'm going to call my other stuff and my props. And I'm going to start with the obvious ones, which are dice. Now, since Throne of Skulls returned in 2018, and I've been kind of going all in on it, I've always had custom dice made, and I've actually got my old 3 here. So here are the ones I've had made. We have the King of the Dead. Need to apparently put you on charge. So since Throne of Skulls returned in 2018, I've had custom dice made to go with my army, and I've actually brought down the collection from the past. So here they are. Here are the 3 I've had made done in the past, which was I had the King of the Dead, which is the trace of the kind of King of the Dead Funko Pop for obviously the Dun Harry year. I also had the Bag End Door for the Erebor Thrones Company with Gandalf's little rune, which I was really pleased with. And then you can actually see there is a slight change in colour because I had to change companies because the guys who made these kind of went bust. But I still went with the green. And this was for the Treebeard year, which ended up looking like some sort of tiki symbol or something. But it's incredibly hard to get anything from Treebeard to fit on a dice. But this is his moustache essentially. So it didn't, this is probably the least successful, but it did the job. And for whatever reason, I've always gone with green. So the green for the spooky green of Dun Harry, the green obviously for Bag End and the green door, and the green for Treebeard. And so I wanted to get some done for this year, and here is this year's. Of course, with what else could it be but the Arkenstone shining at the heart of my army, at the heart of my display board. The Arkenstone kind of was going to become the motif for the army, and it seemed like the perfect thing to be on it for the on the dice, really. I don't know what will be. We don't have any dwarf Erebor dice, do we? So I'm not sure what the symbol will be, but I quite like this. I did a couple of versions actually. I might be able to show you the picture where I asked them to mock up version without the lines, just to see would a big Arkenstone look better. And I don't know. I asked a couple of people and they've all voted for the lines. The idea of the light radiating out of it. That was quite nice. So yeah, I went with these. And as you can see, they're exactly the same as the Treebeard ones, the same kind of colour from the same manufacturer. These come from Counterattack Bases, by the way, which is run by Daniel Mashford. Brilliant company for getting custom dice from. Does an awesome service, and I'd highly recommend him. And so here are now my 4. So I'm really kind of proud of this. This my nice little tradition that whenever I've been doing these Throne of Skulls projects, I've been able to keep these little symbols as reminders of it. But that's what I'd normally do. But as I started to focus in on this project and focusing on the kind of idea of, you know, I knew I was doing it in Erebor, and I knew it was going to be about Thor and his treasure and all that. And the idea of treasure and putting the treasure mounds on the board started to kind of fire something off with me about theming the entire project, basically. And so what I decided to do was actually get different colours done. And so I've also got these. So I've got red, blue and purple. There is no 6 on this dice, that'll be handy. All with the Arkenstone as well. And so the basic idea of this is, as you notice, they've got gold pips, and I went for the choice of bright colours that would have kind of sapphires, rubies, amethysts, and emeralds, and that they'd kind of be like jewels essentially, so that my dice would kind of be different, the different coloured jewels that you might get in the treasure hoard of Thor, all with the Arkenstone shine on them. So I've had a bunch of custom dice made ready for the tournament. All of those on, which I was really happy about. And then even more so, when I started thinking about that, I was like, well, hang on, if these are going to be jewels, what are they going to sit in? I'm not just going to bring my dice bag. And suddenly, as is often the case with Throne Skull stuff, things started getting out of control, and I was like, okay, so what I need is a treasure pile of Thor. So what I got is this. This is a cheap little kids treasure chest off Amazon. Turns out, after I spent a lot of time researching treasure chests in the last few weeks, you can get treasure chests that are this size, hands for scale, or treasure chests you can put at the foot of your bed and keep blankets in. There's nothing in between. I was ideally in my head, I think, picturing something that'd be more like this, and there's just nothing. No kind of toy treasure chests slightly bigger. It's either huge ones or these kind of tiny sort of 5-inch square ones essentially. So I've ended up with this. It was cool. It was cheap. Didn't cost much at all, and I'm sure it'll do the job. And so what am I going to put in it? I can't just fill it with dice. So we have some chocolate coins. We need to, you know, obviously. Have some snacks to get us through the day. You see at Throne of Skulls, you see guys often turning up with little snacks and treats and sweets and stuff. It's part of the kind of friendliness of Throne of Skulls. So they fit the theme really nicely. Easily available at the moment because Christmas is coming and all that. So I thought I'd get some of those. And I thought I'd actually get some treasure. And my daughter Charlotte has treasure. I don't know quite why she got it or where she got it from, but she's got a little treasure chest. And so I asked her if I could borrow some of it, and she's a very, very canny negotiator. And she basically said, if I borrow her treasure, can she have some of my dice? And I said, I accept your terms. So Charlotte has lent me a bunch of treasure in exchange for one of each colour dice, which I think is a perfectly reasonable trade. So I got from her these. Ah, look at these. Ooh, the white gems of Lascalan, possibly. These are kind of plastic diamonds, but I thought were pretty cool. They kind of fit in, so I borrowed a pile of those, so add a bit of that for flavour. And also, she then had coloured jewels like this. Ooh. Ah. So I thought these were quite cool. So borrowed them. In they go. Within the same pile, I found some rings. Are these 3 of the lost dwarf rings? Well, probably not. Dragonfire and all that. But I think there was one. There was, Thrall had his ring. That was the heart of the foundation of his great wealth. But I thought rings were quite in keeping. So some rings in there, and of course our dice. We can pop our custom dice in there. A few more of those to kind of make the treasure hoard of Thrall. And then the last thing I found, I suddenly, in one of those beautifully serendipitous ways that sometimes happens with hobby projects, I had an inkling that somewhere I had something special stowed. And I went digging around my old boxes and found these. These are the Dwarven coins from Weta. And I think I won these at one of Sam Page's tournaments in East Grinstead years and years ago. So these are replicas, I believe, of the coins they used in the Hobbit movie. So you can see the kind of dwarf face there, which is kind of cool. That's the same as that one. And then we've got 2 here with a boar head. I've got some more as well. But I've got a little pile of them. I think I've got about 10. We've got these kind of symbols, which are cool, and they're metal. They're really nice. But when I had my own hobby room upstairs, they sat on a shelf and got dusty. And since I've kind of downsized this little space that I have downstairs, they're now sitting in a drawer, basically not getting dusty, but not getting used. And they are like the real coins from the Hoard of Thrall. So they obviously go in. And what I thought was, I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do here yet, but at Throwing Skulls, people often do like kind of challenges and bets and stuff. Part of the joy of it is that there's kind of fun additional games going on, and people often betting Freddos on stuff in a very GBHL manner. And this kind of idea that, if you manage to kill my leader, maybe you can have a Freddo and that sort of stuff. So I'm kind of thinking I might do something with that. I might kind of use these as sort of secret hidden objectives, and sort of offer my opponents, if you can, I don't know, if you can kill Thrain, you can, have a take home a shiny coin or something like that. Because it's just one of those things that, as cool as they are, they're just sitting in a drawer doing absolutely nothing. I don't need them for anything. They're not doing anything. But suddenly, thematically, they really fit this project, and I just really liked the idea of them being this kind of, it's the corrupting gold. That's what I'm talking about, right? I've got the mountain of gold, I've got Thrall, he was eventually corrupted by it, and could I potentially corrupt my opponents to, maybe if I have an objective out on the flank, I can divert a few models away from the main battle lines. They try and get the shiny. I also thought maybe I could bribe my opponents with them to not to let me win games, although that might work, who knows, but to say, I don't know, if they fail a crucial roll and they've in range of a banner and they go to re-roll it, maybe I could go, are you sure you want to re-roll it? Are you sure you wouldn't rather take home a shiny golden coin? Or something like that. So that's what I'm kind of planning to do. That's my that's where I kind of plan for that. That I'm going to hopefully have some chocolate to share with opponents and some cool dice to use, and maybe some additional kind of games, all wrapped up in this funky treasure hoard, treasure chest. So yeah, that will be coming with me to Throwing Skulls, and it's just another exciting element that I'm very happy with, and looking forward to seeing what comes from it. Boom! So it's update time, and this is how things stand after the weekend. I think I last saw you on maybe Friday, and I was saying that I was worried about that I wasn't going to make enough progress, and indeed I did take the unexpected move to take it back to my parents. I was going with my parents, going to stay with them for the weekend, and I took it back with a very specific job to do, and that was to do the marbling on the board. And so you can see it here. Now this is the stage I call, I've done it on the bases and tried it out, and I'm happy with how it ends up looking, but I've never tried it on anything this scale, and it's certainly the stage in the process which I call ruining it. So you saw it kind of green, I think on Friday morning, looking pretty good, and what I've now done is paint all these lines all over it. Now I know it's under fairly harsh lighting in here, so I'm not sure how well you can see it, but what I've done is paint white lines all over it, and then, as I said when we were chatting about the bases, I painted Hexray Flame for the green, and then Blood for the Blood God for a kind of shiny red based off the kind of Weta behind the scenes. And I've done that, and at the moment it looks absolutely terrible. I want to give a big shout out to my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter Charlotte, who helped me with this. We decided to make it a kind of project for the daytime. It was a canny use of a canny way of getting some more time by making it into an activity while I was spending time with my children, and she helped me doing the white lines, and she was pretty damn good, to be fair, under supervision of trying to do thin lines as opposed to thick ones, but she painted white lines all over my model. She did a banging job, so cheers to Charlotte, as and when she ever sees this. And then that night after that, I then painted on the green and the red. So that's basically gained me a couple of extra days. The next stage is to hit this all with BL Tan Green, and that basically knocks the entire thing back, shades the entire thing, and then I do 2 dry brushes on it. So that's what's left on painting the board. A BL Tan Green wash over everything, and then 2 dry brushes. But it's Monday night. I've got the evening before me, so I can do the wash tonight. But we have hit a problem, and it is a big problem. This is my BL Tan Green. Because it's a wash and I want to match the colours really thoroughly, I've gone GW with this. I've got BL Tan Green real wash, and I picked up 3 tubs of it. And I picked up 3 tubs of it without thinking about the fact that the washes have changed and they're smaller now. So these are the new BL Tan Green washes, and they are a bit smaller. So despite the fact I've got 3, there's less than I thought. And whilst washes do go a long way because they're quite thin, I'm a bit twitchy about whether or not these 3 washes are going to cover this board. So I ordered 2 more pots, and there's a postal strike and they haven't arrived. So tonight is the night I have to wash this. I have to do the wash tonight. If I've got any chance of dry brushing it in the morning, because it will obviously need to be dry. And honestly, if these 3 tubs don't cover the board tonight, I'm in real trouble, because then tomorrow, there's one day tomorrow where they're not striking, so maybe my package will turn up tomorrow, but even if it does, I'll then have to wash it tomorrow and dry brush it the next day, and that will leave me in real problems. So I'm genuinely now, the postal strike has caused havoc for me, and it is a real problem. So I'm going to crack on with this and see if 3 tubs of this can cover this thing. So keep everything crossed. There's just nothing I can do beyond hoping for the best, really. The other thing where things have really gone wrong is that the postal strike has stopped my bases arriving. So Matt Davies, God love him, he's gone above and beyond. And I don't want to say on here in case they do arrive, but he's done more than I could have asked for with the bases, and he sent them to me special delivery last week, and they're still not here because of the strike. So on Monday night, everything is resting on tomorrow. Tomorrow, Tuesday, is the only day Royal Mail are not on strike this week. And so if the bases arrive tomorrow, we've got a chance. If they don't arrive tomorrow, they won't arrive this week, and suddenly I don't have bases for the army. I can't stress what a disaster that will be. I don't have spare bases. I've got Citadel bases, but I don't know what I'd do with them. It's a huge potential disaster. So yeah, the Royal Mail strike has really screwed me. It's caused disruption, as they're meant to. But yeah, so I'm doubly worried and in trouble at the moment on this side of things. So yeah, keep your fingers crossed, and hopefully we'll have some positive news on that tomorrow. What we'll just do now is cut, because I want to show you the throne. I want to show you how the throne looks painted, and then I'm going to show you my objective markers. So I will see you soon. Okay, so here is the throne, and it's glued down. So I kind of want to show the colour match here. Again, like I said last Friday, I think it was, it's really bleached out here under the lighting. It's much greener than it looks, the board. I don't know, sometimes putting your hands in you can get a better idea, but no, it looks very grey on the screen, and the board is green. But what I wanted to show is that all this stuff here was painted with my home base match colours, and the throne was painted with the real Citadel paints when I was painting my objectives. And even though all of it looks greyer, it does all look the same amount grey, and I'm pretty happy with this as a colour match. So, you know, there's always that, you know, you never really know quite how close those colours are until you put them side by side, and I think it's really done a good job. I don't think you'd necessarily know that that one was done with Citadel and one wasn't. And beyond the fact that it's going to get another 3 coats of paint, so a wash and 2 dry brushes, we're seeing the finished effect here, and I think it looks okay. I'm willing to say that this was the right call, and I think the Lego has been hidden relatively well, so we'll have to see what other people think. But I don't think it jumps out and screams Lego at the moment, so that's cool. I glued it on. I was a bit worried about just gluing the kind of Lego piece on top, so what I actually did was, in the bottom of the Lego piece, you know what the bottom of the Lego looks like, with all the holes in it, I glued one of the caps from a paintbrush in. Now I've got one here actually. One of these things. Oh, we're going to go into focus. I glued one of those into the hole and then drilled down into the pillar, and so stuck that in just so it had a little more stability. I'm still going to be dry brushing it quite heavily a couple of times, and then I didn't want it being knocked off and just snapped off, so hopefully that will serve as a bit of extra stability. So yeah, well, something's happened in the temperature. I've just looked at the screen and it's changed, and you can now see it green. That's a much truer version of what the colour actually looks like. I'm not quite sure what changed there, but I'm not going to put anything else in front of it. Must have been when I put the paintbrush in front of it. But yeah, that's a much better idea of what the colour actually looks like at the moment. So a good colour match on that, and the throne is now in place. But as I said, all our hopes now lie with 3 pots of BL Tan green. Can they cover this board? Let's find out. Okay, so the next update is for our objective markers, which are a stage further on from the board. And I have to say, I'm really, really happy with how these are looking. So if any of you were watching along with our Two Towers special stream, you would have seen me working on these, or I was working on these. They would have popped into show every now and again, but I didn't kind of reveal what it was. And I was able to get loads and loads of work done on these. So I think I showed you them when it had one dry brush. They'd had the Caliban green dry brush. Since then, they've had the Sons of Horus dry brush. They've had the Nurgling green dry brush. Did both of those on the stream. I then painted the Ulthuan grey lines over them, and then I painted in the Hexray Flame, and Blood for the Blood God lines over them, and then they all got a wash with BL Tan green, and so this is how they now look. So all they need now is their 2 dry brushes, and so you can hopefully see, whilst you still can see that red line, it's significantly knocked back by the marbling. I deliberately tried to get at least some of it on the on each of the dwarves, the actual dwarfs, rather than just the columns. And then it's going to have they're going to have 2 heavy dry brushes now, Sons of Horus green and Nurgling green, and that'll be finished. And it will hopefully just further dial back the red and the green. So it's a very, very terrifying moment having painted all these kind of bright lines all over your baseboard and your objective markers. But I'm hopeful that my test models on the bases will sort of come through for me, and it'll all work out. So there we go. Obviously I'm only showing you 4 of them here. I do have 6. I worked on the other 2, and I was doing the throne at the same time as well, which, as you've just seen, is now glued onto the board. But I'm really pleased with these at the moment. I'm really happy, and these could well be finished tonight. I'm not sure whether I actually get to them tonight, because I'm going to be working on washing that board, and God knows how long that'll take. But they could be done tonight. They need about I don't know, probably 15 minutes or something just to do those 2 heavy dry brushes, and the objective markers will be done. They'll be done, apart from the fact they don't have bases. I'm going to sound like I'm beating a drum here, but I have, as I think I mentioned, I've got 6 40mm bases on the way from World Champion 7 City Collectibles, and they're not here because of the postal strike. So that I can get around if needs be, but again, that's the wash for the board is lost in the post. The bases for the objective markers are lost in post, and all the bases for my army are lost in the post. I can get around these guys, I just can't get around the 55 missing bases that I need for the army. They're already magnetised, oh god. So that's where you find me tonight, really genuinely freaking out. Everything rests on tomorrow. Everything rests on when our postman comes tomorrow. And it's either going to be an utter, unmitigated disaster, or it's going to be, right, we're on, let's go, go, go. So that's where things currently stand. Cross your fingers, please. And let's hope for the best tomorrow. Hi. Uh-oh. It's a cliffhanger! Oh, yes. As anyone who's probably been watching the kind of timeline along the bottom of this video will have seen, maybe been thinking, he's got an awful lot to do in the next couple of minutes. We're going to leave it here. We're going to leave it here for this vlog. I've got to admit to you, I come to you from the future. It is now after Throne of Skulls. I've come home. Oh yes, I know how it ends. And I've started editing the vlog, and I said right at the start of this one that I thought it was going to be a long one, kind of like the Ents, and it really is. I've been filming for the last 2 weeks, every aspect of this journey fairly relentlessly, and as it turns out, it's coming at nearly around the sort of 3 hour mark, all told. So whilst I think my Ent one last year was 1 hour 40 minutes, and I'm no stranger, I don't really worry about long videos, but 3 hours is a bit excessive even for me. So I figure 2 kind of feature length vlogs is better than 1 Return of the King length vlog. So yes, we're going to leave it here. It feels like a good thematic point to leave it as well. We're kind of halfway through the process, and there's a huge cliffhanger. Will the BL Town Green be enough? Will the bases for the objectives turn up? Will Matt Davis's bases turn up? And will I get it all finished? All that will be revealed in the next vlog, which will hopefully be coming along in about a week's time. But yes, until then, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you've enjoyed the kind of look behind the scenes at what I've been up to for Throne of Skulls. It was a lot of fun, and as someone who has now completely finished it, I can honestly just sit here with happy relief going, well, I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore, however it turns out. But yeah, hope you've enjoyed it, and it gets you you know, painting along, and helps you clear that backlog, as we always try and do here on Battle Streams Middle Earth. If you have enjoyed it and you have made it this long, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment down below and let me know what you think of it, because it really does mean a lot to me. A lot goes into these videos, both in the filming and the editing process, and I really do appreciate it if you kind of drop a comment down there, and I'll try and reply to all of them. And yeah, I hope this kind of tide you over until the final part of our Road to Throne of Skulls vlog, which should be coming in about a week's time. Until then, we will see you very soon on Battle Streams in Middle Earth.